So this is not everyone, but these are the, let's say this happened more than 10 times type of comments. So, so one group out of three was making this kind of mistake. So I'm going to try to review these versus reviewing the eccentric uniqueness of papers, which these have commented inside the paper. So 10 out of 30, again, so I've been talking about the fact that there is the opportunity for A2 milk company to sell some A2 milk because people are looking for A2 milk. So it's not like it's a bad opportunity, but it's an opportunity that you cannot give much weight because it sort of justify the past. It justify it's the opportunity that justify creating A2 milk company, meaning that people were going to want milk with more A2 protein, than meaning milk with A1 protein. Is it correct again? Yes. If you had 10 or 15 opportunities, would it be in the 10 or 15 opportunities? Probably. But if you have 5, I would not say that this is one of the top 5 opportunity because it's an opportunity that justifies the creation of that company 10 years ago. So at least the business of A2 milk is not going down, but I don't think it's that necessary to mention it unless you have a long list of opportunities and you're mentioning it inside the appendix. So if you have more than 5 opportunities, mention the extra opportunities inside your appendix, and then talking about the fact that people are looking for A2 type of protein inside their milk, and that's a growing opportunity, then that's fine. But in the core paper, I think they are more fresh, recent, looking at the future type of opportunities. So make sure you have sources. So I'm actually quite satisfied by the quantity of sources that were given by the students. It's more than usual. However, I don't want to give the impression that because I didn't comment too much on it inside your report that you just had enough. You want to have sources pretty much for everything. So every time you have a bullet point and you have an ID, you need to have a source. It's very rare that you don't need to have a source. Some people, add sources which were not very relevant. So it's better to have a source that is not relevant than have a source, any source. However, be careful to have recent sources and relevant sources, reliable sources as much as possible. So that way it gives support to your claim. Why that's interesting is because I see quite a lot of people that would put a claim in strengths and in weaknesses, and therefore you don't know if it's really a strength or a weakness. And there's also claims that are inside some papers as strength and inside other papers as weaknesses, which shows that they could be in all of these places, but it depends what are your sources. The typical example is A2 milk is too expensive. So some people say it's expensive, some say it's the right price, some say the price should be raised. So I've seen all these opinions. I do not have an answer sheet that says if they say it's too expensive, that's a good answer. It needs to be an argument. Okay, so why is it too expensive? For who is it for? There's not such a thing as too expensive. If someone is about to buy a car, you could say that the Mercedes-Benz is too expensive, yet they're selling a lot of Mercedes-Benz because for some people, this is the price they expect to pay. So for milk, and this has been mentioned by some students in their paper, is if you expect good milk, you expect to pay more money. And in fact, the money that you're paying for A2 milk, with consideration from what you're getting, seems to be a good price. And in fact, some students are mentioning that their profit margin is probably too low, but at the same time, they're trying to grow market share. So, should they raise the price and slow down their growth of market share, or should they reduce the price, increase their market share, but then the very difficult to make the price go up again once people are used to spend a certain price for it and you have competitors entering the market. So there's dilemma in all of these decisions, but you want to try to have the best argument in order to support the decision that you're making. Now, so the maximum pages is 5 pages. There was like 2 groups out of 30 that wrote double space, so they had more than 5 pages. So I recommend to do single space. So I mentioned that. So there are only 2 groups, but I wanted to remind everyone to everybody's single space, everybody's maximum of 5 pages. Now, here's the thing I didn't insist, and obviously I want to insist on it now because, in fact, it's to make your life easier. Writing a marketing report for another country than the United States of America is more difficult. So I don't want you to make it more difficult. Some of you have found some changes overseas that they're thinking of taking advantage of. Many of you have mentioned about China and the changes in China, which are impacting A2 milk because they're very invested there. And that's well noted. What's important, and I don't want to confuse you, is that you can mention what's going on overseas in the other markets where A2 milk is, because those markets may have an impact. So if you see that 50% of their investments are in China, and China is sales are declining by 30%, that will have eventually an impact on the market in the United States because they may have less resources to spend in order to develop some new products in the United States based on how much they have spent in China or lost in China. So anything that is directly or indirectly affecting positively or negatively the US market for A2 milk can be mentioned. However, you don't want to develop a plan. And out of the 30, I don't think there was one, maybe just one, so that's not, I want to catch it before it goes too much this way, but you want to stay on the US market. So you can mention the other markets if it's affecting, but you don't want to develop a strategy, which would be to go and develop a new product or introduce the existing product in another market. I think there's 1 or 2 groups that have sort of wrote this or insinuated that the opportunity is to sell A2 milk in, I don't know, Canada or some other markets because they have the same need for this protein inside the milk. So it could be an opportunity, it could be something to do, but you don't want to go and try to do anything outside of the USA. So state the strategy names in the strategic section. That seems very obvious. And in fact, if you look at my samples, it's very clear in my samples that what I did to make it more obnoxious is I made them, the strategic name, I made them bold and I made them underlined. So if you go again, look at the samples, you'll see that they are bold and underlined. You see, I made them bold and underlined. And so going back to the presentation, I was saying the problem is people are not clearly stating the name. So they're going to say, oh, we're going to increase the distribution and reduce the price because we want to sell more. What is the name of the strategy? Oh, yes. The strategic name is market penetration. So if you say market penetration, you get the full point. If you say market penetration, but doesn't do the description of what you're going to do, which is correct for the strategy, you don't get the full point. To get the full point, you need to say the name of the strategy and correctly explain what you're going to do and which connects with the strategy, and it's not something else, which unfortunately I've seen. People have stated the strategy, but then they say what they're going to do, and that's not the correct strategy. They will say, we're going to try to sell more to women, and our strategy is going to be to create a new product. And therefore, our strategy is new product development. Yeah, but you said you were going to sell to women. That's market development. You didn't mention it. Therefore, you don't want, you want to have consistency between the title, the description, and the strategy that you're stating. And that's the biggest problem, which I can see that many of you have done well, you know, like a third did well, and 2/3 are pretty close to, by just adjusting, pretty close to make it perfect. So consistency is the key here. So, you know, there's this thing about making cheap A2 milk. Is that a good idea to make cheap A2 milk? What do you think? Is this a good idea? Making cheap A2 milk? Would you recommend doing that?
I think that would like it would go against their brand that they currently have.
That's correct. Who stated? Who is talking? Sorry. Was it Ismail or?
Oh, sorry, Chris Morse.
Oh, Chris Morris. Yes. So yes, it would go against the brand. It would go against the reputation. It would go against the sort of the reason, the mission, the vision of the company. So, you know, because we're not A2 milk, so we don't know what they have in their head 100%. However, we can sort of judge from what we see, and it seems more likely that this trying to make a cheaper A2 milk, you know, would go against them. There's another one like this. So it would go against them in what specific way? Why it's not practical for them to make it cheaper?
Because it's expensive to do like the testing and everything on the cows.
Yes, that's correct. Because the reason those cows are happy, the reason the product is good, it's not because of speculation, because they love money and they are you know, dishonest people trying to get rich fast. Is the reason this is expensive is because the product takes more money to do it right. And one of the threats is the fact that to make it A2, to increase the A2 protein, is you have to really select the cows that have a natural production of those A2. And those cows are not the most common, and they require a DNA sort of checking that takes more expenses. And so it would defeat the purpose to try to make it cheaper, because it's not the fact that it's expensive that makes it great. It's the fact that it's higher quality that makes it great. And higher quality is more expensive, not just because people want to spend more for higher quality, but because you just have to spend more. And why am I saying that? Like, would I have said that last year? I would have said that last year, but I want to say it even more this year, because right now in the world, in America, we're living through a time where prices are going up. Prices are going up tremendously. And prices are going up tremendously because there's shortage, but also because there's huge speculation. So shortage, you know, creates a situation where there's more demand than supply. So that creates inflation. But there's also a situation where some businesses, certain businesses, are taking advantage of the inflation in order to increase their prices, blaming it on whatever politically, economically, socially you want to blame it on. Is that the majority? I think it's the, I'm not saying it's all speculation. So I'm not saying it's the majority, but I would say it's big significant factors. So we don't want to be speculative and take advantage of this to raise the price. The price is high because it has to be high in order to afford the steps that eventually create the difference of products. So you really get what you pay for with A2 milk, which is very interesting. It's not always the case. Sometimes you overpay. In that situation, you don't overpay. It's sort of the comfort, it's the safety and comfort of those cars that we are paying for. It's insurance that, you know, this is really what we want. So there's a reassuring, there's a sort of an environmental factor. Is you paying for really these cows to be treated in a way that it's humane? Okay. So, you know, reducing the price, it's to the detriment. It will be a compromise, which sort of goes against the image and the brand. And eventually it probably will hurt the brand, that it would turn this A2 milk into another one of those fake things that we have in our world, where it was too good to be true. And here, once again, it's fake. And that's sort of supported by the fact that the science and the research and the hard data to show strong evidence sort of prove that A2 milk is really doing what we think it's doing does not really exist. It exists, but it's not like a black and white. Because we live in a world that it's not always black and white. People are adult enough to realize that if it's not 100% certified, that doesn't mean that nothing happens. The same as if it's 100% certified, that doesn't mean that there's something happens. So it's an interesting situation, but therefore there's a try. If you try, it works. That's good, and then you keep using the product because it just works. It works for you. It's not 100%. There's a leap of faith. Maybe it's because of that protein, but it works. Okay, so making it cheap is not. I don't have an answer sheet for this project, but I'm pretty sure that looking for making it cheap, making it cheaper, maybe it's a little bit cheaper, maybe it's positive, it's possible by increasing the volume of products being produced. But the concept of making it cheap, I don't think that's possible. It's not desirable, and therefore it's fine to just leave it as something that is seen as more expensive than the standard milk. Do you have any questions or comments? Another issue which is related to that, and that one comes maybe even more often, it's the issue which I think I just discovered, because I think it comes from your generation, who have been programmed, I almost feel like saying, you know, promoted to believe that you know, almond or oat milk is better. And so that promotion has been successful because the growth of those milk, which are still being debated as being allowed to be called milk, and maybe someday they won't be called milk anymore because it's not real milk, so it's something else. But it doesn't matter because they're still good and they still substitute to the cow milk. So people have made that shift, and it's not everyone, and it's not the majority, but it's a very large percentage, and that is still going on as we speak. So there's not a decreasing of consumption of milk. So the consumption of milk is going up because there's more and more people, but there's a decreasing of number of people that are drinking milk because they're drinking something else. Because of the growth of population, there's a growth of milk. And it's even possible that we could be surprised by the fact that people start discovering that the almond milk and oats milk and all of these vegetarian type of milk have created a huge environmental disaster that eventually will reach people's knowledge, that they will realize that it's, since the environment, I could see through this paper, something that people care, eventually it's going to defeat the purpose. It's like we're taking almond milk because it's better for your health and it's better for the environment. Reading those papers, I'm actually reading quite a lot of sources that are actually showing that cow milk is actually good for your health in moderation, and when you're actually consuming it from good sources of milk, such as the A2 milk would seem to be. So it's the typical situation where at the end, it's not too sure really what is going on. It's sort of a money grab where the idea is to make the cheapest cow milk as possible and sell the most as possible, and then to make vegetarian plant-based type of milk and make it as much money as possible as quickly as possible before it's discovered that this has another drawback which may be worse than the original reason that was supporting the growth of this product. So there is changes. It's definitely a market where there's opportunity to invest, and that's what makes it interesting. Once again, opportunities are not what you're going to do. They are not what you're going to do. They're not what you're going to do. And one more time, opportunities are not what you are going to do. So out of 30, there was maybe still 6 or 7 groups that were telling me what the A2 milk company should be doing inside the opportunities. So sometimes it was not as bad as this. Someone had like 5 opportunities and there was 1, or maybe there was 2 out of 5 that was stating what they should be doing. So it was, I don't think there was maybe 1, maybe not even 1 group that had all the opportunities telling me what they were going to do. That was not very common. Maybe I didn't even see it once. If the worst case scenario, it's just once. But it was more common to see groups having 1 bullet point, which was telling me what they should be doing, as if they didn't notice that that's what they were doing. So what you should be doing can be reversed, engineered in order to be stating what is it that is changing, and then just stating what's changing, and that change becomes the opportunity in itself. So again, do not say what you're going to do in the opportunity section, and I think I try to flag these as much as possible. Where does this fit in the SWOT analysis? Recognized for its health benefits, lactose intolerant women reported improvement in digestive comfort with milk containing more A2 proteins. Where would that go? Would it be a strength, a weakness, opportunity, or a threat?
Strength.
So some people put it into strength. That was one of the 2 most common. And the other one was opportunity. So I saw it in both places. Is it correct to see it in both places?
Yes,
Why is it correct?
because of his improvement in digestive comfort, because his digest good, like who cannot take the regular milk is good for them.
So okay, so what you have to remember is that there is internal, meaning as of the company itself, the milk from the company itself, and then there's external, which is the category. So A2 milk as a category is good for women digestive comfort. And A2 milk company, their milk, because it's A2 milk, is also good for women. So what you want to do is separate both. You want to separate what is something specific to A2 milk as a category and something specific to the company. So for example, resorts such as Disney and Knott's Berry Farm are good places where people can relax. But then if you say Knott's Berry Farm is particularly good for the period in October and November, where you have Thanksgiving and Halloween, versus Disney is better at the summer time fun resort activities. So they're both fun because those resorts are supposed to be fun, but they have specific strength, right? And so saying that A2 milk is good because it helps with digestion is a strength, but it's a product strength. You know, it's like saying water is good because it doesn't add sugar. When you drink water, you don't gain sugar. So it would be wrong to say that Arrowhead water is very good because it doesn't add sugar. That's also the case for every other water. So it's not a specific internal strength. It's an external strength. It's a product strength as a category. So you have to be careful when you speak about A2 milk and A2 milk company. A2 milk company is therefore you're talking about the company itself versus A2 milk is you're talking about the product. So A2 milk company has this tremendous strength of having the name which is equal to the product category. And it's also a registered trademark. So to me, that's a big strength. Did I read it 30 times in the report? No. How many times did you read it? 2 times? Anyway, so I don't want to do the paper for you, but that's good. But at the same time, when you're writing the paper, you want to separate what's internal, what's external. So the fact that women report a better digestion after they had A2 milk as a category, independently from the brand, that becomes an opportunity. It's more an opportunity than a threat. However, if you said that people report that the A2 milk from A2 milk company has a better taste than any of the other brands of A2 milk, then that becomes a strength because it's the best taste according to most people. So it's not like A2 milk as a category has a better taste. We're only talking about that specific brand, A2 milk company, has a better taste than the other A2 milk, or maybe even that milk or something like that. So separate, make sure that you separate. That was the point I wanted to make. Now, the majority of the people say that A2 milk has a high price, that it's expensive. Is the majority correct? Most people are saying it's expensive. Are they correct?
If you compare it to the regular milk that's like non-organic, yeah, it is more expensive.
That's correct. So therefore, the answer to this is it depends. The majority is correct if they're comparing it to the average price of a standard milk. But then if you're comparing it to something that is a milk, a high quality milk, and that's what some of the people were saying, it's not too expensive. So it's again by comparison. So the price is either too expensive or too cheap, depending on who you are and how you describe it. So there's not such a universal too expensive or universal too cheap. It depends for who. So if you're selling a Rolls Royce, is a Rolls Royce too expensive? It's too expensive to me. It's too expensive to you. But to the people who buy Rolls Royce, it's not too expensive because they're buying it, because that's what they're looking for, right? So you have to think about the price and the perception of the price, trying to look at this perception from a universal point of view. It doesn't make much sense. It should be from the buyer's point of view. Okay, because it should be for the values. If nobody was willing to pay for it, therefore it's, you know, it's a little bit like a Picasso. A Picasso painting, is it too expensive? Well, compared to a photograph, to a poster, you know, a poster is $50 and a Picasso is $50 million. They both decorate. So one is too expensive. But for some billionaire, it's not too expensive. It's actually, they may even see it as good value. Okay. So try to be more critical and more analytic when you're thinking about your statement. I haven't seen anyone talk about the fact that there are two types of competitors. There's the direct competitors and the indirect competitors. So the best I've seen is someone would say they have a different type of competitors. They have the general milk, they have the organic milk, they have the plant-based milk. So there's different type of competitors. Yes, because they have the direct competitors. The direct competitors are the other brand of A2 milk and maybe the brand of lactose-free milk and also the organic milk. These are the direct competitors. The indirect competitors are the other, let's say, more affordable milk and the plant-based milk. But these are the indirect. So separating them and showing that there's a variation of categories and different level of direct or indirect competitors is important. Now, I call this slide the middle of the road.
Professor, I have a
Yes.
quick question.
Of
Why would like, let's say regular milk that's like non-organic, why would that be seen as indirect?
Indirect because, again, that's my point of view in the sense that if you're somebody who cares of organic milk and quality farming, agricultural products, when you buy a product that is not from that category, therefore suddenly it becomes the plan B, the option B. A little bit like, you know, religious people. Let's say if you eat kosher meat, plan A, which should be 100% of the time, is to buy kosher meat. But then you go in a restaurant and there's nothing else. There's not such a thing as kosher meat and you're starving. Maybe you just eat meat, but that would be plan B. This is not what you want. So somebody who only drinks drink organic product, drinking this product as non-organic, it's still going to be milk, but it will be plan B. And because it's plan B, therefore, I see them as almost like indirect competitors, which means that they would not really consider it, but it may be a situation. Like, in a way, what I find interesting is there was milk before, and then there was organic milk, and then they became plant-based milk. And so plant-based milk was the counter effect of the organic milk, which was still cow milk, and with all the bad things that they at least told us was bad about this product. So it became the plan B of the plant-based milk. Now you look at the plant-based milk and you do a bit of research and you find that it may be plant-based, but it's hard to be as bad for the environment than plant-based milk. That's like eat all the buttons. And so therefore then you revert back to milk, but then you have the mass-produced factory type of milk and then the organic type of milk. And then the factory milk becomes plan B, therefore the indirect competitors, because once you drink organic milk, it's possible that within 1 year that you don't drink organic, non-organic type of milk. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe a long time, maybe by accident. So therefore, that's why I think it's indirect. And A2 is sort of became kind of something else. It's in between all of this because it's not organic, but, or certified organic, but it's very environmentally friendly. So it's sort of it within its own type of definition of what's good for the environment. Organic is good for the environment, but A2 may be as good, if not better, for the environment, even though it's not organic, because it has not the certification, but it has the humane touch. So that's why I see direct and indirect. Does that answer your question?
It does. I had seen it that because they both come from cows,
Yes.
they would be direct. That's
Yes,
what
yes.
I had assumed.
Yes, of course.
But thank
Yeah,
you for clearing that up, Professor.
Yeah, you could. It's that's the simple way, and I think then you can, when you look at it from really a consumer perspective, people may not switch back. You know, they may not go one or the other without seeing too much difference. Once they start seeing a difference, yeah, it's different. You know, that's what happened to diamonds. Is you have the real diamonds and the man-made diamonds. And so they are direct competitors, but eventually as they become their own category, eventually they become also indirect, because there may be some people that just go and say, you know what, I will never buy again real diamonds because I may as well buy man-made diamonds. And therefore they never consider the other one because suddenly they change. And you know, it may be the same thing with electric car, where some people, they never buy again a gas power car. They both compete, but the people may see, no, they don't compete anymore. They're two different things, and I would never want, you know, like it could be exactly the same. Someone never buy an electric car because they go, on paper, it's better for the environment, but in reality, it's worse for the environment. And therefore, now that I know that, how can I pretend to do something that is better for the environment when it's not? And therefore, they are directly competitors, but once you have the full view and information, they are indirect. So because we are marketers and because we are analyzing and doing the consulting, we have to go into more depth than just take milk. All the milk are direct competitors. You have to be a little bit more nuanced. And so I call the slide middle of the road because this was something that was common within 75% of the papers. So there was out of the 30 papers, there was 4, maybe 5 that we are doing it all the time. And therefore 25 that didn't do it all the time. So it's good for everyone, but the one that do it all the time, that's a big problem in their paper. What's the big problem? Is it almost looks like they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the group. And those 6 people said, you know what, let's break the work. You do the key problems. I do the S, strength. And then you do the W, the weaknesses. You do the O, opportunities. You do the CSF, critical success factors. And this person does the strategy. And let's make sure that we never speak to each other. Okay, let's do that. And then, so I'll just give you an example. As a key problem, they put the fact that the government keeps changing the tax and they make things complicated. And most of the time, the taxes are going up. Fine. Then in the strength, they say that A2 milk company is really good because they're particularly friendly with their cows and they treat them in a way that is very humane. Great. Then the weakness is they said those products sold by A2 milk company are too expensive. And then the next one, The opportunity is that hospitals are buying more and more milk, cow milk, let's say. And then the critical success factor is they say we should be very careful in making sure that we have some kind of interest and focus on eventually making sure that A2 milk company is becoming franchised. And then finally, the strategy is sell the milk to pregnant women. What is the problem here that you see between all of these points that you would find in all of the section?
They're not consistent.
They're not consistent. Yeah, that's true. I think you're on the right track. What do you mean by that?
Like, it doesn't make sense. For example, like they should all match. The strength and the weakness and the opportunity should be an opportunity in relation with those. And then so your final strategy should kind of bring everything together and be a strategy to combat the problem.
Yes, that's very correct. So there should be a connection between all of these. Exactly. So these almost look like, imagine I was taking 6 papers, and in the 6 paper, from each paper, I would take each paper just for one section. So I would take this first paper for the KP. Then the second paper, I would take one random strength. And then the third paper, I would take a weakness. If I was to do this, would that be representative of the people of drawing statements from people that never talk to each other? Yes, because they're from the different papers, different groups. So these people never talk to each other because I just drew one thing from each one of the section randomly. So there's no communication. So there's no consistency, like you said, there's no connection. And that would make sense that this is the type of result. And how did I came up with this? Is I came up with this after reading all of your paper. So I came up with sort of a random type of statement I would have found inside your paper. But the problem is when I read those papers, I felt like as if I had given to the students the request of make sure that you all write the section independently without speaking to each other. Make sure it's not connected. If I had said that, that's the result that you would get. When in fact, what I'm saying is make sure you speak to each other. Make sure there's some minimal level of connection that makes it, like I think it was Monica speaking, that makes it consistent. And so that's what's very, very important. So can you do something like this and have a good statement within where the students never speak to each other and still get a B? You could just get a B. But what happens is you could never go above a B. So you could be correct. You could have good statement within each one of the section, but you can never get more than a B because of the lack of connection, the lack of consistency. That group report would be unrealistic. It would be disconnected. So to get an A and an A plus and all that, not only you need to know what's a key problem and address it correctly, you need to have sources, you need to all of this, but you need to have the connection between all of that. There were lots of papers which had connections. Out of the 30, there's probably 10 papers that already as a draft, and I don't see this very often as a draft, a lot of connections. And so what did that do? That made it easier for me to read. And it was not like, you know, this feeling like I'm reading a paper and then I fall asleep and the paper falls on the ground. And then I have another paper in front of me and I keep reading it and I'm not confused. No, I'm confused because it's not consistent. It's like I'm jumping from paper to paper. I don't want to do this. Inside this paper, they should be consistent. So what should you do in order to make connections? What do you think you should do? The first thing, the simplest thing first to make connections. What should you do?
Communicate with your group members.
That's very true. Fantastic. So the first thing is communicate with your group members, be on the same page, knowing the like the theme story, the storyline that you want to talk about. And then have all of these sections sort of consistent around that storyline. And if you have that, then it's connected. And if it's connected, it's already a B something, A something paper, the minute it's connected, because it's consistent. So thank you for your response. You know, everything you've responded to my questions were correct, and that makes it a lot easier for everyone to hear. This consistency is very important. And sometimes that's why I read a paper and it's very good, and I go, wow, that could have been such a great paper, because it's just missing the consistency. Anything else anyone wants to add? Yeah, so not only you need to communicate, but what else can you do to make it more consistent, more connected, besides talking to your group members?
Like read through it and make sure like there's purpose from beginning to end, and that like the recommended strategies are just not coming from anywhere. They have to do with the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah, they have to do with the whole thing. They have to do with the strengths and weaknesses. They have to do with, most important, I would say, with the opportunities. And if you do that, that's fantastic. The paper looks good. And this is not a skill. You know, I have students that have come to the class to talk to you. And actually, there's another student that was very good last semester that has accepted to come to talk to your class, because he said, wow, I wish someone came and told us. So I said, why don't you come and say? He says, okay, I'll come. So I think he's going to come next week, actually. And so I would not be surprised that's what he's going to talk about. The fact that when you write your paper, you have to be consistent, that you have to understand the power and the value of opportunities is to create the purpose. I think, taking again your words, the purpose, and putting it in strategic terms. And that's super important. So here you don't see that. So like I said, you know, there was 4 or 5 that this kind of level of disconnection, but some level of disconnection was sort of more common. So some disconnect between the opportunity and the strategy are a big problem. So how can you fix that? So strategic alternative option is market development, new product development by selling to children because of some kind of a set of arguments why you want to sell to children. What is the opportunity? So there's got to be some consistency. So I want to be able to read an opportunity. You know, imagine what I'm trying to say. Imagine in your report, I grab your report and I say, you know what, I'm going to see if this is a good report, and I have 2 minutes to see if it's a good report. And I need a shortcut. What I do is I read your strategies, strategy 1 and strategy 2. And then I jump into the opportunity and see if they talked about it. So if you say the strategy is to sell to children, I should be able to go in the opportunity, and there's only 5 bullet points, and see that you're saying children are the largest consumer of milk in the United States of America. And their consumption is growing by 6% per year. If I read this in opportunity, and then I see that you say we should be selling more A2 milk to children, then I go, perfect, A, done. But if I go in the opportunity and it talks about everything else but children, then it looks like disconnection. So I think we're good, because based on the feedback of the answer and what the students have said and what I've said, you've therefore heard it several times, and you should probably not be too confused. So this I talk about it sort of at the beginning. It's make sure you are not confusing me and confusing yourself in when you speak about A2 milk versus A2 milk company. So A2 milk is, so let's say you can't read here. If I say A2 milk is hard to make, where does it go? In the SWOT. A2 milk is hard to make. What? So why would this go into the weaknesses?
Because it's a challenge.
Yeah, but you know, there's another milk company. It's called Alexander Milk, Alexander A2 Milk. They're making A2 milk. Do you think A2 milk is hard to make for them as well?
Yes.
So therefore, it's just a product issue in general. That A2 milk is hard to make. So if it's a product itself, it's external. It's not the company. So then if I say milks from A2 milk company are harder to make because the breed of cow is the Kiwi New Zealand breed of cow, which only is a breed that only lives 2 years. You know, they don't last very much. They have a short lifespan. Their breed, the Kiwi breed, versus Alexander used an American breed that lives 15 years. So that would be a weakness. Our breed of cow makes it harder to make milk because these cows don't live very long. And it's part of a problem of A2 milk company. Therefore, that would be a weakness. But if it's the overall concept that making double protein A2 and only A2 protein milk is difficult, that becomes a threat. Okay, so you have to be very careful of internal versus external. Like I said, there is, you know, everybody had 5 or 6 bullet points for each one of these, and it was common to see one that was incorrect. And so you want to read them all and find that you are consistent in what's internal, what's external, and you put it in the right place. In terms of format, people mostly respected the format. I think there was only 2 groups out of 30 that did double space writing. You don't have to do double space writing. So that was the biggest problem, those 2 groups that did double space. And then the other thing that was more common is there were some people that would, you know, they would put a strength, you know, A2 milk as the name A2. And that would be it. Try to not be too short or not be too long. The description and explanation should be 3 or 4 lines. If it's like 8, 9, 10, 12 lines, it's definitely too long. And if it's 1 line, it's definitely too short. So it was for the most part consistent, where when people were long, they were long all the time. And when people were short, they were short all the time. So you want to have enough substance. Between both, I prefer the short, because at least the short, because when you read the long, you spend more time reading it and you don't get more information. The short is you get quite a lot of information in a short time, but the problem is it's so short that it leaves a lot of information to interpretation and to guesses. And I think a 1 line is too short and it leaves too much interpretation. So I would say it's 2.5, 4 maximum lines that you want to have for description. So if you look at your paper again and you see that it's only a 1 line, 2 line, you still have space to add 1 more line, 2 lines, a line and a half. And maybe with this, you can make it even more clear, more specific. So fine, I have reviewed all the key points I wanted to say overall for everyone. Do you have any questions? Okay. Let me see in the chat to see if anyone has any questions. No questions at this time.
Professor,
right. Yeah.
if we wanted to talk to you about like clarification on your reviews, can we do that during your office hours?
Of course, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, you can see me next week between 2 and 4. And yeah, see if you're available at that time. What I would do is I would spend some time and then meet with your group, because there may be something that you don't understand, but someone else understands in the group, and that way you can save some time. That is what I would do. However, 99% of the time, the students don't do that and wait to see me to ask me, what do you mean that S should be a T? If I say that S should be a T, usually means that strength should be a threat. Or if I say your first W should be a T, you know, so it's your first weakness should be a threat. And then you look at the first weakness, and then you will see that usually it's those problem with A2 milk. You know, are you talking about it as the company product specifically within its uniqueness, or are you talking about the overall category of product that has that weakness? Okay, so the fact that, you know, something that you said that was very common was that people didn't know very well much about A2 milk company, and in fact they didn't know very much about A2 milk as a product themselves. So could it be on both sides? Yeah, it could be on both sides, but you have to make it very clear in how you spell it. Most of the time, students only said it in one place, and the way they wrote it, I was not very sure. It was not very clear if they really meant the company or if they meant the category, the product in itself. So just precise it, and then it becomes more clear. And yeah, I think that's important. Do you have any other questions? Thank you, Cesar, for your question. We're going to continue on the 4 Ps and talk about the first P of product. So last week I talked about the product mix, which are all the components that need to be taken into consideration while building the product mix. I defined the fact that the product is a generic term for all the different factors that are inside what is a product. So product is generic. However, more specifically, you can talk about a good, a service, an organization, an ID, a person, a location. Then I spent some time talking about the service because it will add some specific characteristics that was unique to services, such as intangibility, variability, inseparability, and perishability. Then I talked about the layers of the products, like the onion shape, where people were buying first the core, then the actual, and then the augmented, and then think about your product in terms of core, actual, and augmented, and see how you could differentiate two competitors by offering more value to the core, actual, or augmented. Then I defined that there are 4 categories of products, from convenience, specialty, and unsought. These are very much related to how much people spend, how much time and information do they need to have before they can make a decision, and how much experience they have, and how much they are in a position to be ready and likely to be consuming the product as an impact on products being from one of these groups. There's no specific category of products that belong to one of these groups. There's just a general rule of thumb that says that the more product is unique and luxurious, the more it's going to be specialty or unsought, and the more it's something that is regular and frequently purchased, and therefore the more it's going to be towards being more convenient. Then we talked about the strategy, the first sub-strategy. So it's not a corporate strategy, but it's a strategy at the P level, which is the product mix strategy. Product mix means that there are different categories of products, and that's essentially talking about the width of the product mix. So you could have, and that's something that's been very much discussed with the A2 milk, is you could think about developing the product mix in terms of width, where you would have the milk, then you would have the yogurts, then you would have the butter, then you would have the ice cream. So all of this is an issue of the width. And then you could have a depth, where in fact you would talk about the different type of milk, the different type of butter, the different type of cheese. Okay. So obviously you would want to talk about the depth of the cheese of A2 milk company, since they don't have any cheese. So you would only talk about the depth once you have the product that has been launched and it exists. Then we talked about the packaging and how important it was, because people buy what they see, what they remember. People, when it comes to A2 milk, most of what people talk about is the fact that the product packaging was recyclable, and it was in fact being using existing recycled cardboard, and that had an impact on how people felt about companies that were trying to be environmentally conscious, and that was a positive, that was a strength. People also mentioned that inside the opportunity, in the opportunity, you would not want to use the word A2 milk company inside the statement of that opportunity, because it's an opportunity, it's external. So you talk about the fact that there's support and patronage for companies that use packaging that are easily recyclable and are using recyclable materials. That's good, but I think more important than this is there could be some situation where the packaging could be a solution. So what I mean is, and this is very much related to the target. So a lot of people have mentioned that it's possible that kids could be the focus of what A2 milk should be doing. A2 milk is a reasonable intellectual knowledge based on process decision, which is that you're saying, I don't need organic specifically, I don't need lactose-free specifically, I need a product that's going to help me digest, because that's what I want. I just don't want to be sick, and I don't want to have a ton of chemicals. And when you think of this, then that's when you try A2 milk. Now, is there a business to sell this product to the children? And so I don't want to go into the argument that people have used, but that's an argument that myself, which is that if you can, because you see, one of the problem right now is, and essentially it's your generation, is they don't think about milk anymore because they think it's bad. It's bad for your health, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the animals. So they don't want the cow milk. But if you could in some way convince younger groups that cow milks is actually more natural than plant-based, because the nature, milk that comes from plant is not something that is natural, then you could convince them to take cow milk. And so the packaging could be interesting if you sell to children. And so I encourage you, there is a number of people talking about having a mascot that would be a cow and all that. And these are good ideas. But you don't want to say our strategy is to have a mascot as a cow. Why is having a mascot not a strategy? Because having a mascot is a tactic. It's therefore a smaller element that would support a strategy. What would be the name of the strategy? Well, the name of the strategy could be market penetration, selling more of the existing product by having the same price, but more distribution, different type of communication, and maybe a mascot in order to help as well. So the mascot is not a pillar, but it's sort of supporting the pillar and helping. And the name of the strategy for this might be that it could be market development, because you may want to have a mascot because it works better for children. And again, the mascot is not the key point. It's a supporting. Is why do you want to have children? Because if we have children, eventually it's going to be, and we satisfy children, it's easier to keep these people when they become adults. Because from what I understand, the way it has happened is people had cow milk and they were very happy. People had cow milk and they were sort of at discomfort, but they felt that this was life. You get older, you just get discomfort. Until one day they realized that there was a number of food that was creating discomfort. And one of them first one to be blamed was the milk. At that time, they said the milk is not natural, or it's not natural to have milk when you get older. True or not true, there's a debate that says that goes one way and another one goes the other way, so it's hard to really know. But at that time, therefore, the adults started not drinking as much milk, and they probably changed, and as they changed, they also changed for their kids, and so therefore their kids took a different path than their parents when they were kids and their grandparents. And so A2 milk is trying to bring back milk the way maybe it was before. I don't know if before they had more A2 protein and it sort of disappeared, but trying to revive this and trying to bring some understanding of why do people have discomfort. So there's another debate I find interesting, which is the one that talks about the fact there's more and more people that suffer from lactose intolerance, when in fact these people may not be lactose intolerant, but they may have discomfort from the lack of A2 or the excess of A1, which make them believe that they are lactose intolerant, and therefore then they think they are lactose intolerant, and that increases the number of people that think they are lactose intolerant, when in fact it's just that they should be drinking a better quality milk with more A2. And so what's the proportion of people, what is the number of people being having discomfort with milk is huge. What is the exact number of people having this discomfort being lactose intolerant? It seems that that could be very small. And so if you look at the potential of drinkers, because there's so many people that don't want to drink milk for some reasons and are lactose intolerant or have some other disease, how many really have the disease versus how many feel somewhat sick because of the lack of A2, and eventually turn this into saying, I must have that disease. And then the minute they think they have that disease, they don't go back to milk because they don't want to be sick again. So there's a lot of that's sort of that's definitely a problem. You know, is it the key problem? I don't know, but it's definitely a problem. Do you have any questions? So that's why you see the packaging, the presentation is very important, the communication is very important, the support as well from the research and medical and health is very important. I read a lot of claims that I don't want to discuss here to everyone, because I want to leave it as the exclusivity of the group, when there were things that were very interesting and sort of unique to some papers. But it seems that milk has also quite a lot of recognized and more recognized benefits, which were sort of forgotten, but now they're sort of recognized when you compare them to plant-based products. So plant-based products is very good on so many things compared to cow milk. But then when you're also starting to look at cow milk, there's a lot of things that it has that the plant-based don't have. And so this trade-off makes it complicated to know which one is really better. And like I said, it's at the end, you know, I think it's a question of someone trying to make money, and they say that what they have is better. There's lobby on both sides. Yeah, there's lobby and pressure on both sides. So now we're going to look at the brand. The brands are everywhere. Brand is a name, a term, a symbol to designate a product and therefore separate this product with its specific name from the other one. It's some sort of insurance that people are buying because they simplify their life in making decisions. They remember the brand and they create expectation, and therefore it gives a specific identity. So it also helps the company because it helps you differentiate from your competitors. It helps you gain an image. So branding is therefore giving those products a brand identity. So Volvo safety, BMW driving, and all that. What's important here is the fact that when you evaluate a brand, is you are looking at how many people know that brand, how many people buy that brand. So the sales of the brand has an impact directly on the valuation of the brand. The fact that people know it or don't know it has a valuation. The fact that it exists because there's, all kinds of legal work, design work, and maybe prior attachment. Maybe that brand has a history, or maybe has won a number of awards, and these are attached to the brand. And so that's also part of the assets, not just how many products does it sell and how many people know about it. Many big brands, Mars, Unilever, Kellogg's, Wrigley, Kraft, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, are brands that we don't buy per se, but we buy specific brand that they sell. They sell specific brands in order to develop expertise for a specific product category. So they create this expertise for the category, and then they can have a position sounding that they are much more knowledgeable because they're specific to that brand. They may have multiple brands on the same product category in order to serve multiple type of customers. So there's going to be different price range. Brands change in time. So in 2014, you had Apple, Google, Coca-Cola, IBM. And you see that in 2019, it has tremendously changed because suddenly IBM is gone, Coca-Cola is gone from the top 10. And then you have even brands that you never heard back inside the 2014, such as Amazon. So brands are products, and those products are services or goods. How many services? Amazon is service, Apple is product, is good, Google is services, Microsoft is sort of good and services, Visa is service, Facebook is service, Alibaba is service, Tencent is service, McDonald's is mostly service, and AT&T is mostly service. So if you think about it, the service, that's why they are so important, is because there's more and more big business that are at the top being services. So think of a brand that is very good because of its packaging, Coca-Cola, Pringles. So that's what I'm thinking. This A2 milk is so unique that there's got to be some disruption from the packaging. But it's still milk. So it's more of issue with the design of the packaging in order to be memorable. Maybe the design of the packaging to be used by a specific category. Maybe people doing sports, maybe people cooking would have a different designs. Maybe for older people that drink milk, maybe it has a easy opening because they have issues when things are tight and hard to open. Or maybe for kids, there's like a very playful way of consuming the product. So packaging is very important. The taste is very important. So in the case of A2 milk, a lot of what I read in your papers is that the taste is not memorable. It is good, very likable, without specific character, which makes it sort of universally likable. So a product is known because of its unique shape. Apple products are very recognizable because of their shape. I would say, Volkswagen and Ford are also very good at trying to have those elements of their shape. The Beetle was sort of replicated, and that shape was sort of kept throughout the different variations of the Beetle. Different brands due to its high quality of service. So it's a service company. So McDonald's would be the speed of the service, how quickly you get served. American Express would be the safety and how quickly you get information. And Middle Express is it's an airline that is very famous for the limited weight and the limited situation where they are late. So they try to be very much on time. And then a brand famous for the quality of their good. So I use the pen called Mont Blanc. Or I'm thinking about Swiss knives such as Wenger or Victorinox. Or you could have also shavers such as Gillette, Sensor XL type of shavers that are very much more fancy than the other type of shavers from the handle and also from the blades themselves. So brands, they evolve with time because they have to adapt to the environment. And that's important to remember. And brands have what's called an equity. So the equity of brand is broken down into 4 groups. The first group that you need to have in order to go to the next stage is called brand awareness. And in brand awareness, you have recall and recognition. Recall is the most important. Brand recall is if someone gives you a category, what are the brands that you remember? So you say car, you say watch, you say water, you say milk, you say toothpaste. What are the brand that comes? So that's the recall. So it's part of the awareness. Then a lower level, less deep level of brand awareness is recognition, which means that here are some brands. Have you ever seen them before? Do you know them? Just seen them, like barely seen them, recognize them. And so that's the lowest level of brand awareness. Perceived brand association is what do they associate the brand with? What are the keywords that come, the adjectives that come with it? What is this brand known for? And then brand quality is the spectrum from low quality and high quality, which is the step up from brand association. Oftentimes, the association may be the quality. And then brand loyalty is the highest level of brand equity, which is do people buy again? If they buy again, quickly again, is because they really have an affinity for that brand, and therefore they are likely to buy the newest product, the new rendition. They're likely to tell someone else about this brand. They're likely to not feel too negative in case the brand did a mistake. So when you have brand loyalty, you trust and you give the benefit of the doubt. And so brands don't always do things right. They try to do things right. They may be doing things right 100 times in a row, and then the 101st next time they make a mistake. But because there's brand loyalty, therefore the consumer doesn't hold it against the brand. Brand loyalty is very important because it allows you to better negotiate with your distribution channel. So your distribution channel is lazy and it's only going to sell the brands that consumers know. And so the brands that are known by the consumers are the one that they would want to carry because they know there's consumers that follow that brand, that look for that brand, and therefore will make an effort. But yes, Camo.
So like, cause I had wrote about this in the paper that we did a little bit, but it's like the generation and how like certain generations have different levels of brand loyalty, and it's like what's been studied, like the older generations have more brand loyalty than the newer generations because they're more susceptible to like the certain marketing and changing their brand loyalty. Would that also be a threat?
The brand loyalty of A2 Milk Company can be a strength or weakness.
So it's not a threat if it's like they don't have to worry about the incoming generations being less brand loyal.
Yes. So yes, the incoming generation, right? Thank you for rephrasing it. Yes, the incoming generation, if in general they are less loyal, because, but it's how can I say? As you get older, you have more experience, and therefore you have spent a lot of time experiencing different brands. And once you get one that is really good, is you tend to not want to switch as often and easy. When you're young, you haven't had as much experience and as repetitive experience, and therefore you're more likely to switch. So it's not all. So there's an issue of generation. There may be some generations that are less loyal, but there's also an age issue that generates more or less loyalty.
Okay, I understand.
And it's interesting because loyalty is not just based on age, it's also based ethnicity as well. There's different loyalty for different ethnicity for different product categories. So it's not like there's an ethnicity that is more loyal to brands, but there's ethnicities that are more loyal to certain brands within categories. And so brand loyalty is something that you want to constantly monitor because it tells you on how much effort and resources do you want to give to this group of consumers, knowing that they're gonna stay or easily switch, you know, and the more you invest in them, the more money you lose, but you want to get it back. So you don't want to lose money and not be able to get it back somewhere. So that's, so yes, you're right. So in the threads, you could talk about the age or generation loyalty issue, and then you could talk about the brand itself inside the strengths and weaknesses. You can't make up things. You can't say, oh, the brand loyalty of A2 Milk is very good, because you think about yourself and your brother and sister. You have to find information to support that. Some published information that would support that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for your question. So the next decision for the brand is, what brand will you be using? Will you be using the manufacturer brand, the distributor brand, because it has an impact? So there's different level of effectiveness. If you use the manufacturer brand, what is great is you end up oftentimes having one brand used for multiple products. But because of this brand extension, so the distance between the original brand and the brand that has been extended will become larger, you oftentimes also have a loss of expertise and validity, legitimacy of the brand for making these products. Sometimes it's more obvious. So it's like if Ivory is making soap, and now Ivory is making frozen food, there is maybe too much differences between the original brand usage and the brand of the new product that you're making. So in that situation, the counter plan to do against that is to have multiple brands. And when you have multiple brands, you end up having brands that are more specific to the specific product you're making. But at the same time, this will cost you more money to have to market all of these different brands. So there's pros and cons. And the overall idea is the more the extension is inappropriate, because there is a diversification. So with diversification, meaning that the category is totally different, and therefore the market, the type of consumer is totally different, it is better to change the brand, to have a brand that is more expert to that specific product that you're trying to sell. And in the case, also, sometimes you have the same customer, you have the same product, and you want to have different brands. And this is called the flanker strategy. So the flanker strategy is trying to have, they do that a lot into with the use of laundry detergent, for example, where they would have one manufacturer having multiple brands that are serving the same consumers with the same type of product. And the idea would be to have many brands that people don't realize come from the same manufacturer, in order to gain the most market share as possible, not for each product, but for all the combined products. But at the same time, this is also done in order to have more power over the distributors' relationship, because the distributors, they treat brands differently depending on the amount of sales that they have, buying and sales they have for each brand, the amount of profits that they have for each brand, and the amount of unit inventory that they have for each brand. So the more inventory the distributor have, the more they will respect you, the more profit, the more they respect you, the more sales turnover, the more they respect you. So yeah, and maybe then the more exclusivity and contractual relationship you have with them, also the more they'll respect you, because there's sort of a way of controlling the relationship where it's not just taken for granted. So that's what's important. Cash cow is when you have different brands that would generate more sales than the resources that they take. Then you have the opposite between low-end entry versus very high-end entry. And it's a concept called brand stretching, where you're going to try to have, and we saw that when we looked at the product line mix, where you would have downward stretch and upward stretch, is the idea that you would want to have different brands at different end of the spectrum in terms of luxury versus non-luxury, in order to capture the various customers. It's all about getting attention. It's all about bargaining power, and it's all about generating profit. Brands have a personality, and the idea is that different, it's like people, is people have different personality, brands have different personality, and consumers may be buying brands based on the personality or what they perceive the personality to be of the brand. Now, what are the brand sub-strategies? So could you speak about these inside the report and use one of these or two of these for the strategic option? Yes, you could. Are these strategies or are these tactics? They are strategies, but they are not corporate strategies. What do you mean? Well, they're still broad, but they're not as broad as the basic generic strategies such as market penetration or diversification. They are specific to the brand, specific to the product, specific to the mix, but they're still strategies, they are not tactics. So I call them sub-strategies or a P-level strategy. So they are not at the company level strategy, they are at the product, the 4 Ps, product mix level strategies. So the first one is you want to sell a product, but you want to use the same brand name and you sell it in the same category. It's called a line extension. So you use your main brand. So it will be A2 milk yogurt. That's a line extension. Now, if you say A2 yogurt, that would be brand extension. So it's a new category with the same brand name. Then you could have, sorry, I made a mistake because the line extension would not be using yogurt, it would be using milk. So if you add the flavors to the milk, it's a line extension. If you change the category, it's a brand extension. If you use the same category, but you develop multiple brands. And that's what I said last week. I said, if you were to make a milk much cheaper, I think you should change the brand name. If you were to make a plant-based milk, I also think you should change the name. Why should you change the name for plant-based milk?
So it wouldn't you wouldn't get like a bad rep about it. Maybe I don't know how to explain it really. But like if you have a dairy company and then you keep the same name with a plant-based milk, it kind of takes away from the credibility a little bit. And some people may not want to buy it.
Exactly. So it's an issue with credibility. It's an issue. So, you know, when you have a business, you have to think about the strategy. But before you talk about the strategy, what do you have to talk about? The objectives. And before you talk about the objectives, what comes before that? The mission. And what comes before the mission? The vision. So it's vision, mission, objective, strategies, and tactics. So the vision of A2 milk, what do you think is the vision and the mission? In this vision and mission, do you think that there's a mention about the cows?
Maybe it's something like purity or something?
Purity. Yeah, so it has to do with something about the authenticity, the quality, and I think there would be the word cow. The quality cow milk, which are healthy milk because of the fact that the cows are being humanly treated and therefore producing a quality of milk which is above average. So what you put in is you get out. So I think they're in the business of milk, but they could be doing some yogurt or whatever. I don't think it's milk what they're focused on. I think what they focus on is on the quality of the cow's milk for the purpose of making a high A2 protein product. So this high A2 protein milk can be consumed as it is, or it could be consumed from a derived product from that. That's why I think the ideas of talking about butter, the ideas of talking about ice cream, the idea of talking about cheese are very good. So for them to suddenly talk about plant-based is that philosophy of the better you treat the cow, the better the milk is sort of, you have to change. So they would have to find the same motive, the same philosophy within the plant-based, where, you know, because the problem with the plant-based is the use of water in that industry. That's one of the big things that creates an environmental problem, is the use of water. So if they were to go in plant-based, they would have to find a way where there is little weight or less waste on the water in order to create that milk. However, it will be sort of looking down on the cow because that's not real milk. So they could not be doing both with under the same roof. It would be too contradictory and almost sort of hypocritical. So I believe it couldn't be done. It is possible very true to say that they both big competitors, and it's certain that the plant-based is harming a lot the business of the milk, and that's a big motivation to want to join the plant-based in order to have some control over the plant-based and benefit from the business of the plant-based on the cow. But putting it under one roof, I don't know, I think it will hurt. Now some people have made the allusion that they could do a lactate-free A2 milk, where they would remove the lactose and still do the A2 protein. And I don't know, that could be a good idea. There's a little bit more understanding that needs to be done on that. And yeah, and it would be, I think that would come to be interesting if they found that there's a large number of people that have a lactose disease type of thing, really strong disease, where it's really worth, and that's the opportunity really worth removing the lactose, which may be true or not true. It may be true. There's a lot of people that think they are lactose free, but it was more a question of the fact that they didn't digest well the milk, maybe mostly because of the fact that it had too much A1. And therefore, that's the discovery from A2 protein type of milk. So, so I think they would have to create a different brand if they were to go for the plant-based. So in that situation, it would be a new brand, new name with a new product category. The new product category is plant-based, and the new brand will be A2 plant or whatever, or maybe something even further from using the word A2 or whatever, just so there is no confusion. Co-branding is the fifth sub-strategy, which is when you have two brands combined together. And so do they do any co-branding already, A2 milk?
Yeah.
Yes. With who?
Hershey's.
Exactly.
I think.
Yes. So they already do A2 co-branding as a strategy with Hershey's. And that was the strategy, is to use Hershey's. What's the benefit of going with Hershey's? Is Hershey's has a bigger brand recognition, I believe, than A2. Hershey's has a good reputation in terms of chocolate, mostly among popular consumers. So going with Hershey's, if it's intentional, I suppose it was intentional, shows that really going towards a more popular type of chocolate in order to develop a more popular type of brand of milk. If they had wanted to go towards more upper, prestige, high-end type of positioning and image, they would have taken another brand of chocolate. I don't know, like Godiva or something like this, to flavor their milk. But by picking Hershey's, it shows that they're really trying to go for more broad appeal. So that's good. That would have been great for us to tell them that, but they already did it. So as a recap, product is multiple type of products. Product is a generic term. There are 4 categories within services that are important to look at when you think about the service. There are 3 levels of a product, the core, actual, augmented. There's 4 classification of products. Then there's the concept of product mix decision, the depth, the stretch, the width, and the whole line, which is the sum. And what is brand equity? Brand equity is goes from brand awareness, association, quality, and loyalty. And it forms the concept of, which is, if you're not a brand, you're a commodity. If you're a non-branded product, therefore, you don't have any equity. So what's equity is the difference between non-branded product and branded product. One has equity and the other one doesn't have any equity. When you create a brand, you can have a new brand, you can have a brand from the manufacturer, you can have also a brand from the distributor. So the brand from the distributor is also called a private brand. And a number of people talked about private brands when it comes to A2 milk. So if A2 milk was going into private brand, this will be called B2B, business to business. So business to business marketing is very different than business to consumer marketing. Business to consumers is much bigger in terms of numbers of businesses, in terms of numbers of people being involved, but business to business is bigger in terms of the dollar being spent. So who is making the product from Costco? I don't know. It's possible it's A2 milk, but this I don't know. But you could imagine that there are opportunities, since this is still a very new category, the A2 milk, to get in touch with a lot of the distributors, a lot of the franchise companies, and get in touch with them and offer them the opportunity to have their own branded A2 milk. So it could be hotels, it could be restaurants, it could be coffee store like a Starbucks, like a Peet's Coffee, A2 milk and all that. It's going to happen, and that's sort of an obvious direction for a company like A2 milk, is to build their B2B business division alongside their existing, what they're doing right now, which is called B2C, business to consumer division. So what's the name of the strategy for that? Well, it's called market development. Market development by expanding the market from a B2C to have, in addition, a B2B, period. That's what this strategy would be called. We're gonna look at a video. Now, it's a video that's really short. It's just a minute, but I think it's a very important video because it talks about entrepreneurs and how they think.
Here are my 5 red flags for why you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. You're more concerned about the money. You're more concerned about the fame. You don't want to put in the time. You care more about yourself than your employees, and the customers aren't number one. Those particular 5 demonstrate for me a level of humility in being a business owner, and a level of modesty, and a level of self-awareness, and a level of understanding who ultimately drives the business. There is no one captain of the ship, and if there is, that captain better have taken direction, taken advice, learned from, listened to, the entire crew. And if they don't, that business owner is going to be going down with the Titanic. And I see it. I've done almost 75 episodes, and it surprises me how people continue to make the same mistakes. Shocks me.
So yes, to run a business, you do need to be concerned about money, but you need to be concerned about money in the sense that it's not so much the making money, where I have a business to make money. If it doesn't make money, it doesn't make any sense. No, your concern is about the profit margin. So you're concerned about the fact that your business is on a trajectory, is already making some money or on the trajectory of making money. That you understand that you need to generate a profit in order to sustain the business existence and growth. But you're not concerned just about money. But you're not doing this just about money, because otherwise that's going to make you someone who's not going to look at the long term. You're going to be very short term oriented. You're more concerned about fame. Obviously, that's a big problem, because that means that it's all about you. You know, when you do a business, it is about you in terms of about you wanting to lead people, because you have a story, because you have an opinion, because you have a belief that you can make the world a better place. So that's maybe the piece where there's some egocentrism, which is you believe you can do it. So you need to have this confidence. You need to have this desire to want to bring a betterment to your environment. But it should not be about your about making sure that your ego, or that you are being noticed. It should be, in fact, about being humble and about being focused on the success. And the success is that you are able to accomplish your goals. The issue with time is very important, because there's a lot of people that don't realize that they want to become an entrepreneur because they want to be in better control of their time. And what happens is you better control in the times, in the sense that you're not, you don't have someone that tells you what to do when. However, you have a terrible control of time, in the sense that you're going to be working 7 days a week. So an employee doesn't have to work 7 days a week. An employee doesn't have to keep working when they go home. An entrepreneur has to keep working. It's 24/7, and it's not about you. It's about the business. It's like a baby that constantly needs attention, and therefore you sort of lose control of time a little bit, because it becomes not your clock, but the clocks of the business. You know, there's the issue of who you care about the most. And as an entrepreneur, you should be caring the most about your employees and your customers. They are the ones that make it work. You know, you can't be doing everything. So therefore, you do need your employees. And knowing how to incentivize your employees is very important. Your employees are not on the same clock than you, and they need motivation. So paying them the most you can, giving them incentives, encouraging them, rewarding them is very important. It doesn't have to be always financial reward, but sometimes it can be just recognition as well. And obviously the customer is the ultimate boss. They are the one that decides if you're going to stay in business. The customers is the one that generates the profit, is the one that keeps coming back. It's your best marketer. So therefore, it's important to see that your customers are like the blood that you need inside your business in order to grow. So the idea is that you need to grow your business, and you need to have a very humble view of what business is about. It's about growing sales. So having more and more sales is important, but having more and more sales doesn't mean you have more and more profits. So you're looking for more profits, but to get more and more profits, it's oftentimes equated to having more sales. So how do you do this is you do this by being more efficient, but you also do this by creating innovation and being a disruptor. So having a business means you're a leader, that you have an opinion, that you have a desire, and then you turn this into innovations that gets the customers to change their mind and to switch and to support your business and to embrace the new innovation in order to further grow your business. So you need this profit to survive, but you also need this profit in order to reinvest this profit in generating new products. So business is about life cycle and about sort of surviving those life cycles. So you have one product, then two products, then a third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. And these different generations are supporting the overall growth. They are because you cannot expect every product to have the same life cycle. Some products will have a long life cycle, some products will have a short life cycle, some products will generate a lot of profit very fast, and some product will take a longer time. Some product won't work, and you'll have to abandon them. And some of these, you'll have to put them on the side for a short while, and then bringing them back in order to launch them at a different time. In business, you cannot underestimate the concept of timing. You may be selling a product that is perfect, but the timing is wrong. People do not see it. So being in the right timing is very important. So that's what I wanted to talk about in that slide, that you need to have the timing because you need to have a continuous rollout of product in order to continuously grow. And so the rule of thumb is you launch two because you'll have one that fail and one that succeed. Yeah, you could say that. At least you don't want to say you launch two to have one fail and one succeed, because that's still a very high odds. 50% is very, very high. And so it's almost like more like 5 for 4 to fail and 1 to succeed. As you become more experienced, this is where you with experience, I think you can try to start doing 3 for 1, 3 that fail and 1 that succeed, unfortunately. And if you have the resources, you can be patient and try to launch them again. And out of those 4, it's this time you don't have 3 that fail, but then you can get closer to a 50% with the time by launching another later down the road, some of the products that didn't succeed. What's important as well in business is not to think that you have to be too tenacious, because if you launch some products and they don't work, the best thing you can do is try to really understand why they don't work in order to adjust, because sometimes there's no adjustment. The best thing to do is to move on and therefore not lose too much money or not lose too much time. So as I said before, you have objective, which leads to strategy, which leads to tactics, and that's the proper order. You don't want to underestimate the impact of strategies. Students, mostly undergraduate students, underestimate the impact of strategies. They think almost exclusively in terms of tactics, and therefore they miss on the big picture. The big picture needs to be also explained by the objectives. So the objective are the big picture explained by the strategy that you have selected. And then the tactics are the detail that you have used in order to fulfill your strategies. What are the typical strategies? I just mentioned it a few minutes ago, but that's those 4 big corporate strategies. There's more to these, but these are the 4 basic ones. So when you develop a new product, you have 8 stages to develop this new product. The first stage is idea generation, which means that you come up with as many ideas as possible. There's no good or bad ideas. The ideas here is just what you think we should do and why. So with the why, you're going to start looking at the idea screening. Again, looking at your resources, the timing, the potential profits, and then you start developing some concept. So either you develop the full product concept, which you can start testing, or you just develop just a conceptual explanation of what it is by describing what the product is. Then you define what would be the strategies. Then you look at the expense and more the accounting and finance piece through the business analysis. How much is it going to cost? How much money do we need to invest? How much money do we invest in the production versus how much money do we invest in marketing? And then you have the product development phase where you creating some prototypes, and then you test these prototypes, and then eventually you will start selling the product inside this phase of commercialization. So looking at a very successful product called a sunscreen from L'Oreal. So L'Oreal was the first company to invent sunscreen, and I'm going to explain how they invented it, because that's sort of a typical situation where they never thought of inventing sunscreen. They invented it almost by mistake, and then they found a commercial use for the product they invented. So the first sunscreen was called Ambre Solaire, and the idea that started it was made by the owner of L'Oreal, called Eugene Schuller. So Eugene Schuller was someone that was very modest after World War I, and he had a Bachelor of Chemistry, and he fell into the business of making products for hair and skin by mistake, because he was essentially trying to make himself some shampoo for women that he knew because they were expensive, and he kept hearing them complain about the fact that they were not very efficient and they were not easily available. So he did it as a chemical hobby, just to help a few people that he knew. These people were raving about the product that he was making, that they were better than the existing product being for sale, to the point that he started to think about this business, and he started, therefore, I think early 20s, to make L'Oreal into a company that became, well, in fact, it's I think the number 10 biggest, wealthiest billionaire in the world is his granddaughter of L'Oreal. She's the 10th richest person on earth, still making shampoo and soap today. So how did he come about doing this sunscreen? Is because as he became wealthy, he started developing some leisure, which means he started taking vacation. And as he took vacation, he discovered that he was becoming popular in the 30s to go to the ocean, to the beach. Obviously, if I tell you this today, you just think it's normal. Going to the beach is very normal. But 50 years ago, it was still novel. And obviously, 90 years ago, it was even more novel. And so people went to the beach, and they went to the beach dressed. There was no such a thing as a swimsuit and all that. So they were dressed, and eventually they started getting undressed. And as they started getting undressed, they started catching sunburn. And so that happened to Mr. Schuller, and it happens again to his family. And so his family and friends were sunburned on the beach or on the boats, because he became so wealthy that he bought himself a very nice boat and so forth. And so as they were sunburned, he started to think for his own use again, to make some sunscreen. And he developed the sunscreen that became very successful among his friends, among his guests, to the point that he said, oh, that's another product that I could be making. And then he made this product called Ambre Solaire. And this became several $billion business just by itself. The sunscreen, which was fueled by the opportunity to the fact that people had vacation, because people worked before. and they didn't have vacation or paid vacation, and therefore they didn't take vacation, and they couldn't afford vacation because they barely made enough money. But as they got paid vacation, they sort of were forced to take a break, and as taking a break meant going to places where it was sunny and undressing yourself, the sunburn became more common, and then people started using the sunscreen for sunburn. The sunburn was the sunscreen was not used in order to protect yourself from, as we may be mentioning it today, as a skin protection for potential harm and eventually cancer. That's not what they were thinking back then. What they were thinking back then is they just didn't want to get sunburned because it was not nice. And so there was not as many benefits as we may be thinking today. And that alone, that one benefit alone made the business very successful. He kept doing that because he saw that after World War II, women were not wearing hats. And so before World War II, it was very common for men and women to wear hats. And in fact, since they were wearing hats, their hair didn't have as much importance because you couldn't see the hair. So he found that there was a change in the society, and that because women's hair were more visible and they were starting to style their hair, therefore they needed some kind of spray in order to fix the hair in the style that they had decided to have. So he started in the early 50s to create all kinds of hair spray to fix the hair. And eventually he got lucky again and started making billions and billions, more than anyone can imagine. And so L'Oreal, for the first generation of for the founder and first generation, that's how he developed products. Is essentially just by observing and making a product for use for his friends and family members first. And he checked to see if these people like this product, and then he made adjustments. And then after this, he brought it to the market for further commercialization. So it was not the only one. There's many businesses that did that, and there's still businesses that have done that. 10 years ago, Spanx was created exactly the same way. Spanx is a woman underwear that sort of helps you with your silhouette. It was created by also a woman that didn't know much about sewing, and she decided to sew herself some underwear for her own use and eventually for the use of her friends. And eventually that gave her the idea that maybe there was a business that could be started from this. And within a few years, she sold so many that she became a billionaire just from those simple ideas of making underwear that would keep your silhouette. It had been done before. And so it's not like she had the very, very novel idea, but she perfected it with what people really wanted back then, which was an underwear that was sort of attractive itself. So not only it helped your silhouette, but it was attractive because underwear that were managing to change your silhouette had existed before her, and in fact for 100 of years, not 100 of years, but maybe 60 years or 70 years before. But those underwear were very simple and old school, I would say, and nobody had looked at it seriously since. So, like I said, there's other strategies than the basic strategies of penetration development, market development, and diversification. There's also the basic competitive strategies. There's also the strategies of customer intimacy, operational excellence, and product leadership. There's also the strategies which have to do with competitive strategies, market leader, challenger, follower, and nicher. And so the idea behind this is all of these strategies will look at either focusing on a new market, focusing on a new product, focusing on a new group of customers, and trying to be specific to the new customers by offering a product unique to this specific group, or looking at other problems that people have and providing solutions. problems in terms of the price being too high, problems in terms of the product not being available in many places, or available in too many places, and then you go into making it available in just a few places. So the idea is everything can turn into a new product, and there's no market where you cannot innovate. You know, IBM never thought of software, and that was as much as Microsoft never thought of internet as much as Google did, and Google didn't think as much as communities as much as Facebook thought, and so the Facebook has a great community, and Google tried to do a community with Google Plus, but failed and eventually closed it. So you can see that it's not always easy, even though you have billions of dollars, to do something, and it takes an innovator and someone that comes with the right formula to make it successful. Here's an example of another industry where people could have thought that it was not possible to invent, but the cola market have succeeded to that. I can even say Red Bull, in a way, has been successful in doing this, coming up with something new and something different. Another video I want to show you is a video about how you start a movement. So it's also a very short video. It's a video that is very entertaining, and so it's nice to have a video that is entertaining, and it's very simple, and the message is very simple, but the message is very deep, which is what makes things start, what makes things grow, and therefore it talks about a movement.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts, 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that at TED. Thanks.
So yes, what's important is to realize that you need to be a leader in order to move on the disruption innovation that you're bringing, but you should not take yourself as seriously, because what's serious is to get those people that are going to take this second layer of leadership role. You don't want to be someone that has a great idea and keep it to yourself because it's so great that you think people are going to join. Is you need to really incentivize, encourage, stimulate, motivate people to take a leadership role by joining you, where you share this movement. And so that's very, very important. So it's not about you, it's about the idea. Number two is it's also very important to understand that you cannot always be the one that creates be the first to have the first idea. It is also very important in business to realize that it's as crucial to seize opportunity when they are at the beginning, to be in the momentum, to be at the very beginning of the movement. So as a business person, you could say, you know what, I'm going to be the spark. But being in the spark is a lot of energy, because you will be, if you are the spark of several things at the same time, it's likely that you don't spark anything because you are just in too many places. So you want to be maybe the spark, or you may be deciding to be the very beginning, to be at the very beginning of the fire, because that way you don't have to put all the energy of the spark. So you just look, and that's what the concept of opportunity identification is about. It's not just finding opportunity and creating the whole thing. It's finding opportunities and some movements which are the very beginning of the process, that you can more easily contribute and gain some momentum and some benefits. Because at the beginning, things are not as the same value, and therefore you can make a much bigger return from having been at the very beginning. Did you like the video?
I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I'd never thought of like the leadership subject in that way. Has what he said about how they tell us all to be like a leader, but it's really about like that first person that follows you, that makes you a leader, and
That's
that
right.
pushes you forward. So I thought it was interesting.
Yes, thank you for sharing. And while you were speaking and what you were saying made me think about social media very much, because we've all lived this situation where we've seen something at the very beginning, and then we see it's very popular, and then we see that nobody cares anymore. And so it was not as frequent before social media, but with social media, this concept of movement, news, and leadership and all this, I think, became much more apparent. I was talking about Coca-Cola. And so this company called Meca-Cola is a company that actually took advantage of multiple movements to create a new brand of Coca-Cola. So, sorry, a new brand of cola flavored soda. So they call it Meca-Cola because they took advantage of a trend, which was the fact that more and more people in the Middle East or Muslim countries were consuming cola drinks, and it was usually the largest one. The fact that that Coca-Cola brand, even though it was growing, was oftentimes equated to being American, that maybe some of those Muslim people, because of all the turmoil, from the early 2000s, sort of till today, but I guess now the news have very much changed, have turned to become people that may have negative point of view when it comes to the United States, and therefore people wanted to have more of a local or more of a brand that would embrace the same cultural values than them. So they said cultural values, growth of cola flavored soda, and they created Meca-Cola. But this is not just what has happened in the Middle East. There's other brands that follow suit with this. This is a brand from France, from an area in France, which is called Brittany. And Brittany is on the the north and west of France. It's an area that used to be its own country, I would say 700 years ago. And it's still there's still a pride of being different in that area. They have a language, their own language, which is Gaelic, which is a language that they speak also in Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. And it's the same ethnicity, if you want, than these people. They have the same instruments. Another area is also called Galicia. So that's the northwest of Spain. They play the bagpipe and all this. So it's this kind of group of people. So these people have created their own cola, which is called brass cola. And these may look like small things, but in fact, they turn up to be very big and very successful because people fully embrace this concept of having a product made locally. That makes a difference. I will finish with this today.